Welcome to the podcast, The Next Big Thing. I'm your host, Keith D. Terry, a consultant, a coach, and a serial entrepreneur. The mission here is to teach, inspire, and to motivate. In today's episode, which really excites me for a number of reasons, we're going to be talking with Mr. Derrick Sanders. The title of this episode is Champions of Wellness, Making a Difference with Mental Health First Aid. And last thing I'll say, so we can talk to him and you won't hear me, is Derrick is a certified instructor for mental health first aid in the U.S., authorized by the National Council for Mental Health Wellbeing. Derrick, welcome to the show. And if I didn't give any, if I need to have you add to your accomplishments, please do so. But welcome to the show. How you doing?
I am wonderful, and thank you for having me, Keith. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. So, Derrick, you know, as we get into this, as I told folks, you and I met when about a year and a half ago, and you know, I guess I could tell people why I did my mental health first aid, but that'll take away from you. You know, tell the listening audience a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, first of all, it was November of 2022 that you and I first met, by happenstance, of course. And we met again in November of this year, 2023. So those are the two times that we've met there. So again, a little bit more just to add on there. As an instructor for mental health first aid, that's one of the things that I do is I teach the mental health first aid course, which again we can speak about the course itself. Additionally, I'm also the national trainer, so I do travel and on behalf of the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, I do train the trainer in essence and spend a few days where we certify instructors to also be certify to people to be instructors, so that those instructors can also teach the course that I do teach.
Yeah, well, excellent. And you're right. It was 2 Novembers. I've seen you for the last 2 Novembers.
Yeah.
And
hopefully I'll see you next November.
Yeah. You know, I know why I showed up in 22. And, you know, I might as well tell people now, my son died by suicide. And so for me, through my pain, through my suffering, I wanted to help. And so what I love about Derrick is his path. And let's talk a little bit about your path. I know my path, and folks listening, it seems like your whole background has been steered towards helping people. And, you know, and so talk a little bit about your journey. Let's cover that.
Absolutely, Keith. And Keith, thanks for just sharing that with your listeners, and you've shared that with me, which again I appreciate that for many reasons. Number one, for a couple of things that how we can help others and help ourselves is by sharing some of these stories. Because that brings humanity to the conversation, you know, and sometimes these conversations are awkward. They're difficult to speak about. And when we start to think of many of that, and we'll have a conversation, but, we talk about stigma in these courses, and you mentioned you gave a little bit of history about mental illness and mental health challenges, and with that comes that stigma. Yeah. And when we talk about stigma, we start to talk about having that awkward conversation, because a lot of that is because of the stigma. A couple of reasons. Number one, stigma that comes with it, so people don't want to talk about mental health challenges because of that stigma. And then the next part is, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to have that conversation. And there's other things there, but when we do talk about, just for example, and again, we're going to talk beyond mental health first aid. However, one of the really great things about mental health first aid is, first of all, it helps reduce the stigma.
It
And
does.
how we can reduce the stigma is by having this conversation in public and talking about it out loud. And it no longer becomes that taboo subject, that taboo topic where we have to either not say anything or talk about it privately. So there's one way of reducing the stigma. The other piece about that works there is having that awkward conversation is making it okay, or giving us some practice on even just how to have that conversation. For example, how to have a conversation with silence. It's okay for silence to be a part of that conversation. Let silence be there, and to know that me, or I am not a mental health professional. I don't have a mental health background. However, there are things that I can do, and one of those is I can have a conversation. I can have that awkward conversation. So as we have that conversation, what is it that I can do as a non-clinical, non-professional? What are things that I can do, or anybody else for that matter? What are the things that I can do to help others? And this is where mental health first aid comes in. Go ahead,
Well,
Keith.
just to stop you for a second, well, one, I think you've been a phenomenal help to me. We didn't know each other from anywhere, and I walked in, and you said a couple of things. Before I forget this point is, you're non-clinical, but what you do with the mental health first aid is so impactful, and we'll get into that. But one of the things I will talk a little bit about, you're right about the stigma, and people don't know what to say. When I experienced what I experienced, those folks that are in my family, close friends, I heard instinctively from a lot of folks, but a lot of folks that I thought I would hear from, I didn't hear from because they didn't know what to say to me.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I understand it, because at the time I really didn't have the capacity to take on their own emotional burden. I could only deal with my own. And so, but when I look back now, I think you're absolutely right. The reason I talk about it is it's like trying to find the light bulb in a dark room, or trying to light switch in a dark room, where the more I talked about it, the more I found my new normal. I'll never go back to where I was, but my new normal. And so I shift to trying to find out how to move forward, and then I meet you, and I love your story because you're a law enforcement officer, and you come from this military cadence. But if I when I was sitting in the room, you never presented as a hardcore person. It was this sensitive, pedagogical perspective and teaching method that I thought was great. And it actually taught me how to speak truth, but in a very sensitive and aware way about some really tough subjects. So,
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you that tip, that kudos.
Well, and I thank you for that. And actually, one of the things that again, this mental health first aid actually allowed me to do was because really the concept of mental health first aid is it really brings a humanity. It really brings empathy and humanity. That's the concept. That's the premise of this. And then it gives you some actionable ways. So to kind of go back to 2015, I actually signed up for a course just to attend a mental health first aid course.
Did you?
It was a day shift. I was on the day shift patrol basically, and I signed up for that course because I got to get out of work for the day. And when I went to the course, not knowing what it was, it gave me some actionable tools that I could use. When I went back to work, I was able to use some of the tools, some of the the tools and things that we're able to say. And it actually started to change the trajectory of my career. It changed the way I would actually speak to people. Not that I thought I was speaking to people well prior to that, but in hindsight now, especially when it comes to mental health challenges and that type of conversation, really what it did was gave me different ways of language. Language is very powerful, and and with that process, I didn't always have to have the right answers. Maybe sometimes it was just give some space. Maybe sometimes it was give some silence, and those are the things. Again, it also allowed me the opportunity to just have some grace to know that I didn't always have to have the right answers. I didn't always have to be able to fix everything, because really in my career, that's what we do. We fix things, and some things I can't fix, but what I can do is I can give the person I'm speaking to some reassurance. I can give some hope. I can let them know that recovery is possible, that resilience that we spoke about. And know that consistent reassurance is there. So when we talk about that, and we actually have an activity that we do in the course, and one of them is what things doesn't sound like and how we can change some of our language to make it sound like. And there was a particular activity there in that course that a light bulb came on for me and said, that's how I have been saying things. And here's a way that maybe I could change that. Have you considered this? And I went back to work and I actually started doing that. And at that moment, I realized this is something that I can use daily at work, at home, everywhere else in the community. And then in 2017, there was a great person that had actually called the sheriff's office and wanted to set up a course in our local community. And I happened to be the point person for this wonderful instructor. And in doing so, we set up some courses, several of them. At that point, I was offered to become an instructor because just our work together. And then for the next year or so, year and a half, maybe we did a lot of courses and then became an adult instructor. So that was the youth course, became an adult certified instructor. And then got a call and asked if I wanted to become a national trainer and go on to the national stage as far as traveling and doing the train the trainer. So again, it changed. Oh, go ahead.
Well, let me ask you this. So I love that journey. And on a national, first question before I forget this one is learning how to change how you talk. Mm-hmm. If it weren't for training, do you think that's something that's difficult for people or easy for people?
I think it's easier if you know how powerful language can be. And when I say that, there's so many things that we say. So, for example, one of the things that I might say to Keith is, Keith, you really need to go talk to a counselor. There's really something wrong. You need to go talk to a therapist. You need to go, whatever the case may be, because I don't know what I'm saying and I don't know how to fix it. So I need to tell you that you need to go speak to a counselor. So that's one way I've said you should go speak to a counselor. I've identified that in my. So again, how powerful language is. First of all, me telling you what you should do. Who am I to tell you what you should do? Right. So there's that first piece of giving you that advice or direction of fixing your problem that I'm not really qualified to do. But what I actually would change that to is, have you considered speaking to somebody that might be able to help you unravel all this? That's an awful lot to process by yourself, Keith. Have you ever considered speaking to somebody that might be trained to help you process all of this, so you're not doing that alone? So just those two ways of, you should go speak to a counselor versus, have you ever considered speaking to somebody who's trained to help you process that, so you don't have to do that alone?
I see.
So those things, and once you start to think of it in that sense of how you can use your words and your language in order to really get this helping others, and doing it with being genuine. People can sense when you're not genuine. It takes about 20 seconds for somebody to realize when you're not genuine.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And once you realize that you truly are being genuine, people feel that. People will understand and feel that. And at that point, people are more likely to seek help also if a person that they trust suggests it. So there's the next piece. If there are many people that trust me because of either my connection with them, my profession, whatever it may be, and if I can suggest it in a way that is such as that, I may be that trusted person, and they may be, and actually that the studies actually show that people are more likely to seek help if so. I may be the person, that one person they trust. And
I agree with you on that. I'll tell you, I'm an old school parent, which leads me into my second question. I'll say this. I thought when my son started exhibiting some challenges that, one, because I come from the African American community, you could pray your way out of it. Two, take a prescription and in 10 days you'd be over it. Suck it up, because you need to man up. And my question to you is, you travel the whole United States. Are you seeing geographical or cultural differences in some of the folks that you interact with?
Well, the fact that you just bring up culture, I want to just highlight that first of all, is that regardless of whether you're going coast to coast, crossing the country, you can be in your same apartment building, your same office building. And when you start thinking about culture should be a part of every conversation that you ever have, simply because, years ago, I thought culture was, race, ethnicity, and what country you're from. But really, culture is infinity. We have culture all within our workplace. Each department in a work environment might have a different culture. At school, there's different cultures with different grades. So I'm glad you brought up the word culture, because it's truly infinity. And if you're trying to assist somebody, having that cultural humility should be a part of every single conversation, because I may not know your culture, but I do know there is culture there. So when I'm assisting somebody, one of the immediate questions should be, when I'm offering some sort of assistance, should be, and what might that look like in your agency? What might that look like in your family? And because if I'm offering some assistance and I don't know how that's going to work because of your culture in your workplace, your family, wherever that may be, that needs to be a part of the conversation. That culture is a really big piece. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a big component.
A lot of people, I hope people are getting that, because, in my own family, we come from the same blood, but we have different belief systems, different practices, different expectations for our kids. And those things are so impactful, because I just know that as folks navigate, being a man, being a transgender, being whatever it is your belief system. If your family isn't on board or has a different viewpoint, it puts pressure, and we're all trying to figure out where we're trying to go. So, I just know that, in talking with you, you're traveling quite a bit, teaching quite a bit. And I'd say, how many folks have you taught? What, maybe 10,000?
I can't even put a number on it. But what I can tell you this, especially when you start asking about putting numbers on things, and I try as well as my colleagues do also, which is I just want to shout out to all of my colleagues and not only my national trainer colleagues, but all of my instructor colleagues, all 30,000 of those, and my 50 national trainer colleagues. But think of it this way: when you have when you want to put numbers on it, if you teach a course that has 20 people in it, and we just in November, so with you just using our course from last November, just a month ago, there was 16 instructors there that were all certified. If those 16 instructors go out and they teach 100 people, there's 1,600 people. So those 3 days that we spent, that touches 1,600 people. And then those 100 people who are now certified mental health first aiders go out and they assist or touch another 100 people. Look at the effect that it has. So you can see behind me, and you can see part of it. It says, hashtag be the 1 in 15. What one of the pieces of that is, they estimate that everybody has about 15 people in their immediate circle of friends, family, about 15 people. And the goal of mental health first aid is to make sure that 1 out of every 15 people is certified in mental health first aid. And if we can meet that goal, that means that the statistics, or most people are more likely to have at least 1 mental health first aider in your circle, because many people have about 15 people in their circle. And that's the goal. And we want to make this as common and as prevalent as CPR, where, for example, many lives have been saved from people who are certified in CPR. They're not heart surgeons, they're not professionals, and yet they're out there saving lives, doing things until the next level of care gets there. And really, if we can make that as common and prevalent as CPR with mental health first aid, the same thing, where we can be saving lives until the next level of care arrives. What is it that I can do as a non-professional? Can I speak to somebody? Can I give reassurance and information? How can I, bring that humanity, that empathy? What is it that I can do as I'm, encouraging somebody to get appropriate professional help, or even some self-help? There are many things that we can do there. Can I give you that consistent reassurance? Those are a lot of the things that we can do, and we can do that every single day, and we can start to change. I say this, and people might look at you, but you can change the world, and it can be starting with the 3 feet diameter around you, and then 6 feet diameter around you, 10 feet diameter. And just so when you start changing the world, you can't change all of the world at once, but you can do so just a little bit at a time. And that's the goal.
I appreciate the CPR analogy, because I think I certainly didn't get it. And I'm just raising my hand. I was, and I think a lot of people don't, because when I read the history of mental illness, you could see people had different viewpoints. They wanted to sterilize folks that had problems, and a lot of people just thought that you could pray your way out of it, or you could man up or woman up, or just act differently. And so I like that analogy. So let me just ask this question. So as a former law enforcement officer, how um, is this something? Well, first question is how do police officers uh, view mental health? And it's not an indictment at all. It's just awareness. Um, when you go through the academy, they talk a little bit about it, I assume. But talk to me a little bit about the what how you've seen it shift, um, or has it shifted? I'm not sure. So
Okay, well, so let me go back first of all and say that when I went through the academy, that was back in, whew,
don't date yourself now.
yes, a long time ago. So more than 2 decades ago. So I have to at least say that we've had decades passed since then, and I can assure you that things have changed since I went through the academy.
Gotcha.
So I also want to put the fact that most police officers, especially the ones that I know, are good people and they want to do good things. Sometimes you just need the tools to do it,
Yeah.
to do those good things. So if you don't have the tools to do the good things, sometimes it gets more difficult. And that's where I talk about, first of all, there's that crisis intervention team member, which is a 40-hour course that I took. But not every agency has the ability to send everybody to that. That's a whole week, and so many of them spend 1, 2, 3, a few officers per year, per quarter, whatever it may be, depending on the size of their agency. A lot of the smaller agencies might one per year, one per every other year. But mental health first aid, again, we can get that done a lot more often, so that can be an interim. That being said, I do believe that with the tools involved, if you have the proper tools,
Yeah.
and so just a couple of anecdotal experiences that I had. Again, I know that I wanted to do well. I just to go back, I was, many times they have, Boy Scout wanted tours and all that. I remember this group of Boy Scouts, I don't know, 9 years old, whatever the case may be, and they're asking all those standard questions. You have all the tools on your belt. Have you ever used that? Have you ever used this? Have you ever did this? Those are the standard questions with the young people who look up to police officers, and I'm thinking, no, I haven't used that. No, I haven't used that. And then I'm thinking, why haven't I? What's happening there? And after I thought about that for a little bit, I thought, here's one thing: is I have my mind and
Yeah.
my mouth,
Yeah.
and if you can get these two to work together, you can do a lot of things. If your mind and your mouth, and you can start to use a language that can have conversation. You can do a lot of things. And yes, I needed all of those tools that I carried on my belt, and I'm so thankful that I had all of those. However, those are the tools that I wanted to use last. The tools that I want to use first is my mind and my mouth, and the more tools that we can get for that, for the careers of law enforcement across the nation. Those are the tools we need to be getting out there, and I will say that has changed over my career, and continuing to change, continuing to add to the mandates, and I've had personal experiences from different people across the country, where people may have not had the best experiences with law enforcement, and I've been able to, just in how I carry myself and how I interact with people. I've had people come up to me afterwards and share, thank you for just being you. Of course, I didn't know what was happening, but thank you for being you, because I think you've kind of opened up my eyes a little bit, that I'm able to now see law enforcement in a different light.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It changes, or maybe doesn't change any experiences maybe I've experienced. However, what it does is it allows me to open my eyes and see law enforcement from a different angle,
Yeah.
allows me to just look at it from a different light. And I'm thankful for that. But I'm also, again, we can use that and also put that in with mental health and mental health first aid, because that's what we ask a lot of our participants to do. Because as you mentioned, sometimes we grow up with these preconceived things about mental health, and if we can just kind of open the door and shine a light on something, and it may not have to be a secret anymore. Maybe we can open that door and allow somebody to see in at a different angle, and maybe reduce some of that stigma, have a different conversation.
You know, here's what I would say. I think you hit it on the head. I think part of what I like about the mental health first aid is that it allows for folks to have a conversation, to be open and aware. You know, I have the certification for adults and kids, and what I can tell you is, you know, people really, you know, we've heard it before. Hey, Keith, how you doing? They don't really want to hear the truth. You know, they want me to say fine. But if I said I'm really struggling, or I said I'm so depressed I want to hurt myself, or I have no energy. What I like about the mental health first aid component is it allows us to. It taught me to stop and see the person. It taught me to stop and ask that young kid, because I can't. You know, every day now that I walk outside, I look at people, and you can really see when someone is kind of struggling. And what I don't do is make an assumption that how you are on the outside is how you are on the inside, because there are some folks that are really struggling and you would never know.
And that's what I was going to go there, Keith, is when you said, I can see when people are struggling. And that's maybe not even the case, because maybe we can't see when someone's struggling. And that's when you just mentioned that about asking that question. You know, I call that my Walmart theory. You know, when you walk into Walmart, you see somebody that you know, it's, hey, Keith, how you doing? You know, I'm supposed to ask you that because I know you. And you're supposed to say everything's okay or good. And I call it the Walmart theory, because you can test this out when you go to Walmart. By the time somebody answers, they're 3 aisles already down. But, oh, okay. They're not waiting for an answer. They're usually gone. And so if I happen to recognize something and I say, hey, Keith, how are things going? And I keep walking, then you're supposed to say, okay. However, if I say, no, really, Keith, here's what I noticed that you haven't been coming for coffee like you normally do on Tuesday mornings. Yeah. At that moment, I have now really said to you, Keith, is I'm really giving you permission to really just tell me it's okay. And you make that choice now to open up. I'm saying I'm offering the space and the confidentiality, whatever it is, to, if you choose to have that conversation with me, or maybe even if we have that conversation, or neither of us have that time, maybe I say, you know what, this is what I've noticed. I've noticed you haven't been coming for coffee on Tuesdays like we normally do. What are you doing at 6 o'clock this evening? Maybe we could go out for coffee. And I've really opened up that line of communication, or at least the possibility, where you've now got the opportunity to say, Derrick has noticed, and I have the option now to have a conversation if I choose.
Yeah.
And so that there's a way that we can do that.
So let me ask this. Let's shift it a little bit to the business side of this. If you want to talk about it.
Yeah, certainly.
So you've left law enforcement and now you're doing this full time.
Yes.
Is there a business avenue for folks who might be listening of doing this? Can you talk a little bit about the the business side of this?
Yeah. So when I mentioned, back in 2017 when I became an instructor, I taught these courses, on my time off, my days off, and you get paid for your time basically because you're taking a day out, and so I got paid for my time, and I taught a course here and
It's
there.
good to know that you're not volunteering your time.
Yes, I have, of course. There's
Right.
lots of that, but when you're teaching day after day after day,
Yeah.
but so I actually opened up my own business that as an instructor, and I was doing it on my time off. And then even when I became a national trainer, what I was doing was having to take my vacation time as a deputy sheriff, taking all my vacation time in order to go and do that. So again, I opened up my own training business. A couple of years ago, I retired as a deputy sheriff, and this is now what I do full time. Is I go and do community courses, I do my national training courses, and those types of things. So, and now I have made this into. So, as a matter of fact, this office that I'm sitting in, this isn't my home office. This is an office that I actually teach courses out of this. I taught a course here just last week from this office downtown. And so there is a business component. Maybe we can talk about that at some other time, but nonetheless, there is a business component here that, again, we can do this. However, the whole underlying piece of it is how can we get this message across and of opening up that conversation with mental health.
So, Derrick, how do people find you and utilize your services? How do they do that part?
Well, let me give you, first of all, one thing that I want to point out is mental health first aid is across the nation. Well, first of all, mental health first aid is across the world, but mental health first aid USA is across the nation. So certainly you can go to mentalhealthfirstaid.org, no matter where you are in the country, and you can find courses for any of that. To get a hold of me, you can certainly call me. You can go to my website, which is alliancetraining.us. And so those are some different ways that you can get there. You can get me also at Derrick, DERRICK, at alliancetraining.us is my email address.
Great.
Those are some of the ways that you can get a hold of me.
Well, you know what I love is people. Do you think that I still think that a lot of people don't know what mental health first aid is. Mm-hmm. And, I want to spend the last couple of minutes talking a little bit about what that is. I think you do it a whole lot better than I could ever. But I'm just going to say this. It really is a real curriculum that has impact. The folks are not trying to act like clinicians. At no time are they trying to diagnose. They're trying to help. And so, Derrick, if you could just add a little more commentary and flavor to it, I would greatly appreciate making people aware of what it is, because it is a program that is making a difference in the communities across the United States.
Yeah. So mental health first aid it's a skills-based training that teaches people how to identify, understand, and respond to signs and symptoms of a mental health or substance use challenge. Very similar, as I mentioned, to any other first aid program like CPR. It helps us assist someone maybe that's experiencing a mental health or substance use crisis until professional assistance or the next level of care arrives. So it certainly doesn't make us the professional, but what can we do until the next level of care arrives? And what mental health first aiders, we learn or teach a 5-step action plan on how to recognize warning signs of a mental health or substance use challenge, and how to provide that help in crisis and non-crisis situations until we can get that through. Right now, like I said, there's 3 million people who have been trained in mental health first aid, and we're hoping to get that.
Wow! How 3 million?
3 million, yes.
Wow! Yeah. Wow!
So one other thing that I want to just mention, I didn't expect this, but you opened up this podcast here with a little bit of history, and I had no idea that was where you were going with this. However, one thing that I do want to point out that, President Abraham Lincoln, way back, I think he was born in 1809. There was an issue in the Atlantic, October 2005 in the Atlantic, and it was entitled Lincoln's Great Depression. I'm actually reading this here just so you know, but because I want to make sure that I quote them correctly. But this is a quote. Lincoln did suffer from what we now call depression, as modern clinicians using the standard diagnostic criteria uniformly agree, but this diagnosis is only the beginning of the story about how Lincoln wrestled with mental demons and where it led him. And it continues on and goes on. And however, so now that we have got that in writing in some magazines, one of the things that I want to point out about that, if that were an actual diagnosis for somebody like Abraham Lincoln, some of the things that I'd like to point out is, I can't diagnose, I can't provide treatment, I can't provide therapy. So my takeaway from that particular passage is that, that if that were a mental health challenge or illness, it's not a flaw in somebody's character. It doesn't disqualify somebody from leadership or his performance. As President Lincoln has proved, his actions stood the test of time. Look at all the things he's done. So people can still strive to rise to great heights. So mental illness can certainly be a challenge, obviously, but if we allow it to, it does not have to define us. We can succeed. We can achieve greatness, even above and beyond with any challenge. That recovery is possible. We can work through many things, and we can reduce the impact that any challenge that is there. And that's one of the things that I want to leave all of your listeners with is, if we can reduce the impact of any mental health challenge, and we can do that through either mental health first aid or just us being great humans, let's do that. Let's reduce the impact, reduce the stigma, try to figure out how we can keep having those awkward conversations. And with that, that's how you can start to change the world, one person at a time, 3-foot diameter, however it may be. That's really what I want to make sure we leave with is let's change the world.
And with that, Derrick, I thank you so much for coming on, your words of wisdom and that inspirational message at the end, and in your knowledge throughout. It's been great. So thank you very much. Thanks for listening to The Next Big Thing. I'm your host, Keith D. Terry. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support this podcast, please share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and a review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on my YouTube channel at Keith D. Terry. If you want to recommend a guest, please email me at info@terryperformancegroup.com. This has been produced by your host and Jade Productions.